How can I find the theme of a text? Let's remind ourselves what theme is. Theme refers to the underlying message of a story or poem. Theme is a big idea, something that you can learn about life in general. Sometimes an author will come right out and state the theme of a story or poem. Listen carefully. I looked at all the candy I could buy. I had the dollar right here in my hand, but suddenly I didn't feel hungry. I wished that I hadn't stolen the dollar. I wished that I hadn't taken the money from my brother's bank. I don't think I want to buy anything today, I muttered quickly to the clerk. Then I ran from the store. I had learned something important. It's better to be honest than to have money. So you can see in the highlighted portion at the bottom that that is the theme of the short story that I read. When a theme is stated, it's usually found at the end of the poem or story. So look at the last page of a story to see if you can find a stated theme. Sometimes, though, the theme is not stated. Then you need to make an inference. Remember that an inference is a conclusion that you draw based upon evidence that you find in the story, as well as background information, things that are already in your schema. So listen carefully to the story. We knew that it was time to set the butterfly free. We had seen it make its chrysalis and emerge. Then it had flown around in the cage, trying to stretch its wings. Although we felt a little sad, we opened the lid to the cage one evening. The butterfly seemed confused and didn't leave at first. Then, in one burst of zigzag fluttering, it erupted from the cage and flew all the way to the end of the yard and down the hill by the school. That was the right thing to do, Aiden said. I know, I answered, even though I already worried about the butterfly. What would it eat? How would it survive? In this slide, you can find evidence inside of the text that will help lead you towards the theme. So that evidence has been underlined now. That's the difference between this slide and the last slide. So the words such as free, so they're talking about setting the butterfly free. They're talking about how it flew all the way to the end of the yard and down the hill by the school. So once it was let go, it just took off. It was the right thing to do, Aiden said. So the idea is that if we looked at as a possible theme, wild creatures should be free. Other common themes. Persistence pays off, right? Working really hard and being persistent. Honesty is better than cheating. It's more important to be nice than to be popular. Be careful what you wish for. Love is the most important force. So these are all common themes you could find in stories. We are going to look at theme in this book called The Lily Cupboard, a story of the Holocaust. And with this, we are going to not only choose themes that pertain to this particular book, and we've talked about how you can have more than one theme, but we're also going to find other stories that we've read, and we are going to think about a huge umbrella, right? If you picture an umbrella, and how if you have a theme and the umbrella is the theme, what other stories have we read that would fit under that theme? How could we compare literature across the board and say, oh, well, this book or this story has the same theme as another? The back of the book, The Lily Cupboard, I'm going to read that for you. There's a blurb. We call that a blurb on the back. Miriam must hide from the German soldiers. As World War II rages, all Jewish people are in danger so that she will remain safe. Miriam is sent away from the city to live with a family who is not Jewish. If the soldiers come, she will hide behind a wall in the secret lily cupboard. Miriam learns that even in the darkest of times, many heroes emerge. I'm not sure what you know about the Holocaust, and if we were in a classroom atmosphere, I would typically say, turn and talk, and let's pull some information out of what you know about this time period. But the Holocaust was a time period right around World War II, when Hitler was in charge in Germany. And it's a long story as to why, but he felt the need to have one race of people, the German race, and to kill certain people who were of Jewish descent. And so he basically would hunt the Jews and destroy them. And he would send them to concentration camps, and he would kill them, and or use them for labor. And so during this time, Miriam is Jewish and her family is Jewish. And so the story is about her family hiding her from the Nazis, from the Germans. So we'll talk about that further as we go into the book. The Lily Cupboard. On May 10th, 1940, shortly after the beginning of World War II, Holland was invaded by Germany. For 5 years, the Dutch people endured German occupation. Jews in particular were sent to concentration camps, where many died a hideous death. But even in these dark times, there were many heroes. Okay, so I want to just talk to you a moment about the setting of the story. This is historical fiction. And the time, or the date, is 1940. We know that that is the beginning of World War II, which I already stated. And now we know where we are. We're in Holland. Holland is where the Dutch people live. And Germany was invading countries in Europe, and they were in the process of invading Holland. And the Jewish people that lived in Holland, and there were Jewish people that lived in Holland, were fearful that Germany had come in and invaded them because they knew their lives were in danger. So there's a little bit of a setting when we talk about conflict and setting, which we have in historical fiction. This would go right along with that, right? We have obviously the setting of the story creating a conflict. You know, there is a fierce war raging, Miriam. My father is speaking to me quietly. My mother is crying. Our tiny country could not hold out against the enemy. Any day now the soldiers will come. That is why you must go into the country. You must be kept out of danger. Miriam, my mother takes me in her arms. She smells of silk and lily of the valley. Mama, I whisper, what are you and Papa going to do? Will you be safe? We'll be all right, my dearest girl. Right now you must be kept safe, as Papa said, and before you know it, we will all be together again. The farmer and his wife where you will stay are very kind and very clever. Just do exactly as you are told. Besides, my mother nearly crushes me against her chest. It will be much easier for Papa and me to take care of ourselves, knowing that you are hidden away in the country. My mother and I pack one small suitcase. I put in my favorite books. Only 3, my mother says. We have to leave room for sweaters and boots. You pick them out, Mama. I can't choose. My heart feels like the little stone lantern in our garden, heavy, without a candle. What about a doll? You choose. My mother smiles, but I know her heart doesn't have a candle in it either. No dolls, I answer. They have to stay together. I turn away to hide my tears. So a couple significant things here. Miriam is very scared, and she makes, if you listen to this line, she says, my heart feels like the little stone lantern in our garden, right? So that's a simile. Basically, a stone lantern would be heavy, and so her heart is heavy. And when people have a heavy heart, it is that they are upset. And I found it interesting as well, and you may too, how she would not separate the dolls, which is almost the symbolism of her family separating. So she, instead of packing one of the dolls, which she could have easily taken a doll with her, she kept the dolls together. And the dolls represent her family and the fact that, she wishes that they could still stay together. Papa drives me into the country. Tulips and hyacinths and daffodils are blooming everywhere. We stop in front of a low, thatched roof farmhouse. Fruit trees blossom up against its wall, but it is not my house. The woman has a broad, kind face and wears wooden shoes, but she is not my mama. The man is very tall and smokes a pipe and has a million wrinkles round his eyes, but he is not my papa. A boy with straw blonde hair and a freckled nose says, "I'm Nello." "I'm Miriam," I answer. "I don't have a brother." "I don't have a sister," he grins. He looks funny with his new teeth half in. My father shakes hands with Nello's parents. He bends down to give me a hug. I have to ask him, "Papa, why am I safer here with you than with you and Mama?" "Because this family is not Jewish," he answers very slowly. He kisses my forehead. I try not to let him go, but he is gone. So the parents have dropped off Miriam to this strange family. What would motivate? So think about motivation, or what would make Nello's parents want to hide Miriam? Okay, so we could say, if this was an open discussion, I would have you talk about that. What kind of people are Nello's parents? What kind of people are Nello and his family? So they must be kind people who care about everyone in the country. They risk their own lives. Imagine the trouble that they would be in if the soldiers were to come to the house and realize that they were hiding a Jewish person in their house. So if you think about the characteristics of Nello and his family, we're talking kindness and we're talking bravery, right? So I'm starting to see some themes come about that we can talk about later. The cows are black and white and full of milk. Small barges move along the center of the canal. Where is the war? "Do you know where the war is?" I ask Nello. We're sitting on a bank of grass. I'm trying not to think of home. "I don't." Nello throws a stone into the water. "But Father does. Father says the soldiers will soon be everywhere. That's why you're here." Nello's parents show me where to hide when the soldiers come. They press a lily painted on the center panel of the cupboard. The cupboard opens. Otherwise, it looks just like the wall. I peer inside. It's dark and smells of winter clothes and rubber boots. It makes me cold. Nello's father is saying, "The warning signal will be whistling Frere Jacques." He puts his arm around my shoulder. "When you hear it, you must come directly here. After the soldiers have gone, we will knock 3 times. "Don't worry, Miriam," Nello's mother says. I like her voice. "Don't be afraid. We'll never be far from you." So you can see that they have a place for her to hide inside the wall, which is not uncommon for Jewish people to hide in places like that, where they almost have an invisible room that almost is behind the wall. And unless you were to really pay attention, you wouldn't know it was there. So that happened often during this time period when people like Nello's family were trying to hide Jewish people to save their lives. That night, the feather bed is cozy warm, and Nello's mother tucks me in. But it's not my bed. I can't sleep. I can't stop crying either. Nello's mother hears me and comes back. She smooths my curls back from my face. Next morning, Nello's mother says, "I hope you fell asleep, my dear. Of course you miss your parents and your home. Nello would cry if he were not with us. But think how happy your mama and your papa are knowing you are safe here. Come, I've made some porridge with cream that's thick and clover pink. There's nothing like it. It will make you smile." And Nello's father puts a basket by my bowl. I picked some berries long before you woke. They're fresh and ripe and still covered with the morning dew. He puts the berries one by one on top of the porridge. There, he leans back in his chair. There's a bright red M for Miriam. Thank you. I try to smile. I want to smile, but... Just then, Nello jumps from his chair. Come on! He grabs my hand and pulls me through the door. Nello's mother calls after us. The porridge will get cold! Nello takes me out beyond the kitchen garden near the wood. The hutch is full of rabbits, big and small. Choose one, Miriam. Nello thrusts his hands into the pockets of his wide blue pants. He's looking very proud. Go ahead. A small black rabbit sits apart from all the others by the wire. It looks at me. I pick it up. Its fur is like silk. It pushes close against my chest. I feel its nose twitch cold against my arm. I'm going to call you Hendrik. I kiss its ears. That's my papa's name. Might turn out to be Hendrika, Nello giggles. My papa says you never know with rabbits. I don't care what it is. I take a long, long breath. The ache begins to go away. Mama and Papa will be happy that I have a rabbit. They love animals. I kiss Hendrik's nose. You're mine, and I will not let anything happen to you. The rabbit's eyes are closed. I like his cold nose twitching by my arm. You're mine. I kiss his ears again. Thank you, Nello. I want to hug him, but Hendrik is in the way. Thank you. I'll keep him safe. I promise you. If the soldiers come, I'll keep my rabbit safe. So think about some of the things that Miriam is experiencing there, and how is she feeling safe by the family that has taken her in. So what are the kinds of things that they're doing to make her feel safe and more comfortable? So think about that. So you would identify things in the story, events such as when the mother talks to her and soothes her at night when she can't sleep, makes porridge for her. The father goes out and picks fresh berries for her porridge so that she has fresh berries that morning. And now Nello is taking her out and having her pick out a rabbit, almost like a pet that she can keep for right now. So all of these things are really important to help Miriam feel safe. Weeks pass. I spend hours and hours with Hendrik and Nello. Then one day, I hear someone whistling, Frere Jacques, just when Hendrik is taking his morning hops. The soldiers must be here. Hendrik, come, we have to go. Hendrik is nibbling on a bit of green. I creep up slowly, not to frighten him, but just as I reach out, he makes a giant hop into the herbs. Then I see Nello and my father and his father running toward me. They both are out of breath. Miriam, come on. Nello's face is beet red. Didn't you hear us whistling? The freckles on his nose seem very large. Miriam, the soldiers are only 2 farms away. I can't go without Hendrik. You know that, Nello. I have to keep him with me. Mama and Papa wouldn't go without him. You know that. Never mind the rabbit, Miriam. Nello's father reaches out for me, but I drop onto my knees and scramble into the garden where I can see my rabbit nibbling on some chives. I'm not going into the cupboard without my rabbit. I have to protect him. She's not going without her rabbit, Father. Nello's voice is hoarse. She's named him after her father, and she's going to keep him safe no matter what. I look back at Nello's father. He's nodding his head at Nello. Then he scoops up Hendrik and me, and we're bounding into the house. Nello's mother is standing by the cupboard. Get in. There's not a second left. Get in, my child, and not a sound. She doesn't notice Hendrik in my arms. This time there is a pillow on the floor. I pull my legs up under me. Hendrik is warm against my chest. I wait. I hear heavy footsteps past my wall. It's all right, Hendrik. I comfort him without a sound. His nose is still. I hear the voices of the soldiers harsh and loud. I hear Nello's parents answering, softly and slowly. I don't know how long we've been waiting, Hendrik and I, but suddenly we hear the 3 soft knocks, and my lily cupboard opens to the light. They've gone. Nello's mother pulls me close. Nello's father takes a long puff on his pipe. Are you all right? He asks. I'm fine, thank you, I smile at Nello. And so is Hendrik. I told you, Nello, he'd be safe with me. I turn to Nello's mama and papa, just the way my parents keep me safe with you. How do you think Miriam felt sitting in the cupboard? Pretty scared, right? How do you think, or what do you think Nello and his family were feeling when they were talking to the soldiers? Same thing, knowing that their lives were at risk if they were to find them. And so it makes sense that they didn't want her to take the rabbit into the cupboard, because if they did, the rabbit could potentially make noise. It's like taking a baby in there, and you can't control that, and it could give them away. So that was a very scary part of the story, I would say. The very last page talks about families like this one hid Jewish children for 5 years till the war ended and saved many lives at the risk of their own. So sometimes the kids would stay with these people for 5 years. Imagine being without your family for that long of a time period. So general examples of theme in literature could include any of the themes that you see on the right-hand side of the page. Now, one of the things that Mrs. Spencer and Mrs. Hayes and I want you to do is not just come up with a short one-word theme, but try to elaborate something in regards to that theme, okay? So if you're talking about, if we think about how war, let's think about this story, right? War is a theme, all right? So we can expand on that. This is what we want you to do. We don't want you to just say, well, war is a theme of this book. We can say, well, what about the war that is a lesson to be learned? We could say that during war, people do things that they never thought they would ever have to do. During a war, people become the bravest. So there's themes that, that can be expanded beyond just the one word. So when you go to choose a theme in your novel, it's going to be important that you don't just pick a one-word theme. Give us a lesson that you learned. Something else, and we talked about this at the beginning. You should be able to find common themes across texts. So there's what we call almost a thematic connection. So how do these last few stories that we've read during this time period that we've been home, and I've read some stories to you, how are these connected by theme? So I've listed a few of these here. So the theme of standing up for what you believe in, that's a theme. Standing up for what you believe in. So the Nello's family would have been really scared to take Miriam in, right? But they did it because they believed in what they were doing. They believed in saving the Jewish people across the countryside. So they did that for them. Well, think about Grandmama's pride. What did they do to stand up for what they believed in, right? You see people all over the South who are fighting against segregation. You see Grandmama and you see the mother who are ignoring and not giving any kind of, acknowledgement to what's going on down there in the South and during segregation. So that is the same type of, you can make that connection between the two stories. Friendship. We know the theme of friendship in both the lily cupboard. You can see it with Nello. You can see it with Nello and Miriam. And you can see it in Seed Folks and how they develop that friendship, those strangers, people who didn't even trust each other, didn't even speak each other's languages, develop that friendship over time. So that's a common theme in both stories if you think about it. Hope for the future. All three stories have a hope for the future, right? The lily cupboard, a hope for a better future where this Miriam is able to live and be back with her family. Seed Folks, so much hope for the future, right? Everyone had their own individual story and they were all hoping for something better, and they did. They made something better of their lives together, a community garden. Grandmama's pride, a hope for the future. Someday the South will be less segregated and more like the northern part of the United States. So you can read all the way down and you can look at all of the other thematic connections across the texts that we have. So if you want to, you can even take your novel, come up with a theme, and you may have several themes, okay? But you want to try to come up with a general one that spans through the entire novel, okay? And then perhaps, if it's possible, think of another piece of literature that you read and try to connect that theme to something else. Even if it's one of the stories that we just read in this time period that we've been off, or something else that we read in school this year, something else that you read in school this year. So that would be a great way to do some further analysis of your theme. I hope this helped in determining theme for your novel.